The clang of weights echoed sharply through the spotless gym as three broad-shouldered bodybuilders slowly closed in on a young black woman by the bench press. Their loud voices sliced through the ambient beats and quiet conversations around the room. "Hey, sweetheart, this isn't your section," one of them barked, ripping a dumbbell from her hand and tossing it aside like it was trash. Another one let out a loud, cruel laugh as he flexed in the mirror. Let's see if she even knows how to use real weights. Her workout came to a jarring stop. Her space, once private and focused, had been invaded without warning. The taunts carried through the room, drawing the kind of attention no one wanted. But nobody moved. No one stepped in. The arrogance on the men's faces said it all. They believed they ruled this place. Layla Monroe, 25 years old, sharp-eyed and self-contained, raised her hands slightly, a gesture of calm. "I'm just trying to finish my set," she said, quiet but clear, her voice tight with self-control. But her eyes gave her away. There was hurt beneath the surface, a tiredness that came from knowing exactly what this was. Not the first time, probably not the last. She tried to step back, give them room, de-escalate. But the humiliation clung to her skin like sweat, thick and inescapable. The tallest of the three blocked her path, grinning with smug amusement. "What's the matter? Can't handle a little competition?" Another one nudged her shoulder, knocking her slightly off balance. "Didn't know they were letting just anybody in here," the third one muttered, lacing the words with venom and malice. Their laughter got louder, sharper. It wasn't about the gym anymore. It was about power, about making her feel like she didn't belong. Layla clenched her jaw and said nothing. Around them, other gym members turned away. Some glanced up, discomfort in their eyes, but quickly returned to their routines. A few whispered, uneasy, but no one stepped forward. No trainer, no manager. Nothing but silence, dense and suffocating, filling the gaps between cruel jokes and forced laughter. The bullies fed on it, emboldened by the room's stillness. Every second of ignored cruelty gave them more license to push further. It was as if the whole gym had silently agreed that looking away was easier than doing the right thing. In the far corner, Sylvester Stallone sat on a bench, adjusting the cable machine. Dressed in a worn hoodie and dark joggers, his expression unreadable, he watched the scene unfold without saying a word. His eyes, sharp and deliberate, missed nothing. His posture was relaxed, but alert. He wasn't there to pose. He wasn't there to interfere. But something shifted in his gaze the moment the three men began to close in, calculating, observing, waiting. Then one of them grabbed Layla's wrist and shoved her back, hard, toward the weight rack. She stumbled, hitting the cold metal with a gasp as he grinned wide. "Maybe you should have just stayed home, princess." The room froze. Dead silence. Stallone calmly dropped his towel, stood up, and began walking forward. Before we continue, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to catch Sylvester Stallone's epic showdown with these racist bullies. And drop a comment below telling us where you're watching from today. It was a weekday afternoon, the kind of hour when the gym thinned out just enough to feel both luxurious and exclusive. Every surface gleamed under LED lights, chrome equipment, full-length mirrors. Even the chilled water dispensers looked like they belonged in a tech commercial. It wasn't just a place to train. It was a performance space for ambition and ego. Among the treadmills and resistance machines, three men dominated the free weights area. They weren't just working out, they were performing. Their voices carried, their bodies glistened under the overhead lights, and their laughter rang out sharp and invasive. They weren't there to improve. They were there to impose. A woman entered the floor near them. She moved with confidence, not arrogance. 25 years old, tall, graceful, her dark brown skin catching the light as she walked. Her name was Layla Monroe, a nonprofit worker who had moved to LA from Atlanta 3 years ago. This was her sanctuary, the place where, for at least an hour, she could push through the noise of the world and just breathe. But as she wiped down a bench and unpacked her gear, she could already feel the shift in the air. The men noticed her, not in passing, not respectfully. They noticed her like wolves eyeing a lone deer. One of them leaned over and whispered to his friend, too loud to be private. Didn't know they let everybody in here. Another chuckled, nudging his buddy. The third stared as she began her set, then loudly said, "Careful, sweetheart. Those weights might be a little heavy for your kind." Layla paused, just briefly. She'd heard that tone before. Not just the mockery, but the weight behind it. The assumption. She took a breath and kept going, her face set, refusing to give them the satisfaction of reaction. But they weren't looking for silence. They were looking for dominance. The second man approached her station, wide-shouldered, sleeveless hoodie, covered in tattoos. He likely got to look tougher than he really was. "You sure you're in the right place, miss?" he asked, pretending to stretch while blocking her access to the weights. "I mean, this area's kind of for serious folks, you know." She glanced at him, voice even. "I'm here to work out. That's all." But he didn't move. "Relax, we're just being friendly," he said, eyes trailing down her body like he owned the right to look. Nearby gym-goers shifted. Some looked up. Most looked away. No one said anything. That was how these things usually went. It was easier not to be involved. Easier to keep headphones in and eyes down. Layla moved to another bench, towel in hand. The third guy followed, grabbing her towel mid-motion and tossing it onto the floor. "Oops," he said with mock innocence. "Clumsy me." She froze, looked at the towel, then back at them. Her jaw tightened. She bent to retrieve it, hands steady, breath controlled. "Back in the day," one of them said, loud enough for others to hear, "you'd never see something like this. Guess times really have changed." The tone was unmistakable. She rose slowly, eyes forward, not meeting theirs. "Please leave me alone," she said, calm but strained. But now they were circling her, all three of them. It was no longer about gym etiquette. It wasn't about flirting. It was about putting her in her place. In the far corner of the room, someone sat silently on a rowing bench, wiping sweat from his brow with a faded gray towel. Dressed in a black hoodie, well-worn sweatpants, and a navy cap pulled low, he blended in, almost. But his frame, though older, was still broad and grounded. His presence didn't seek attention, but it held gravity. Sylvester Stallone wasn't there to be recognized. He didn't need the fanfare. He came to stay in shape, to fight the slow slide of time the only way he knew, by moving. But even with earbuds loosely resting in his ears, his eyes caught everything. He'd noticed the laughter before it turned to mockery. He'd seen the shift from teasing to targeting. He'd watched her body language go from relaxed to guarded. He'd seen this kind of thing before. Hell, he'd lived it in 100 variations, on sets, on streets, in rooms where people thought power meant volume. And now, in this overpriced, glass and steel palace of image, it was happening again. 3 loud men, 1 quiet woman, and a crowd that looked the other way. The second man stepped closer to Layla now, brushing her shoulder with his as he walked by. "Don't be so uptight," he said, grinning. "You're in L.A. Loosen up." Layla stepped back. "Don't touch me," she said sharply, louder than before. That was when everything stopped. Weights froze mid-lift. Treadmills slowed. Even the music from the speakers seemed to recede. And Stallone stood up. He didn't rush. He didn't shout. He didn't need to. Just the act of him rising was enough to draw eyes from every corner. Some people recognized him instantly. Others just saw an older man walking toward trouble. But the way he moved, controlled, grounded, made even the trainers behind the desk glance up. He crossed the gym floor with purpose. No drama, just certainty. The men turned to face him. Hoodie guy squinted. "Wait a sec," he said, his smirk widening. "Ain't you... what's his name?" The lean one snapped his fingers. Yeah, Rocky, or Rambo, or whatever. Didn't know they let movie stars in here." The third guy added, "What's up, Hollywood? Come to direct a scene?" They laughed. It was loud and obnoxious and weak. Stallone didn't flinch. He looked at Layla first. Her breathing was shallow. Her hands trembled slightly, but she met his eyes, and in hers he saw what he needed. She didn't want saving. She just needed someone to stand up. He turned to the three. "You done?" he asked, voice low, steady, roughened by time. They exchanged glances. "Excuse me?" Hoodie said, stepping forward, chest puffed out. "I asked if you're done," Stallone repeated. This time, quieter, deadlier. They didn't know how to respond. And then the lean one laughed again and made a mistake. "Man, get out of here with that grandpa energy." The room exhaled, waiting. And Sylvester Stallone, the man who'd taken punches on and off screen for 5 decades, took one more step forward. Not angry, not afraid, just ready. Because some things don't get old. Some things, like standing up when nobody else does, only get sharper with age. And in the next breath, everything would change. The moment Sylvester Stallone stood up, the air inside the Life Fit Wellness Center changed. The silence that had hung heavy now thickened with tension, like the stillness before a thunderclap. He moved slowly, not with age, but with purpose. Each step, a reminder that sometimes presence alone speaks louder than any shout. The bullies turned toward him, smirks still curling on their lips, not yet realizing the line they had crossed. One of them, broad chest, shaved head, too much confidence, tilted his head and sneered, "Yo, Rocky, you trying to play hero now?" The others chuckled, emboldened by the laughter they'd been feeding on all afternoon. But Stallone didn't stop. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't even look angry. That was what made it unsettling. He just kept walking, closing the distance between himself and the 3 men, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Layla was still against the rack, eyes wide, chest heaving, one hand gripping her towel like it might ground her. She didn't speak, didn't have to. Stallone reached her and stood beside her without saying a word. His eyes moved over her first, checking for harm, for fear, for strength, and then slowly shifted to the men in front of them. "That's enough," he said, the gravel in his voice low but sharp as a knife through silence. The tallest of the men stepped forward, puffing out his chest. "You don't get to tell us what to do, old man," he said, trying to sound tough, but there was a flicker of hesitation in his eyes. "Back off. We were just having a little fun." "You think that's fun?" Stallone asked, still calm, still controlled. "Humiliating a woman who did nothing but walk in the same door as you?" He shook his head, just once, as if he'd seen this movie too many times before. "You boys got a real warped idea of power." "Look, man," the second one said, voice rising with defensive energy. "You don't know us. You don't know what this is about." Stallone's gaze didn't flinch. "I don't need to know you. I heard enough." The third man, growing agitated, stepped up beside the others. "What? You think you're going to come over here and teach us a lesson? You think because you did a couple movies with fake fights, you're going to scare us?" "No," Stallone said, eyes narrowing, his voice dropping even lower. "I'm not here to scare you. I'm here to stop you." And then, as if someone hit the switch, the moment ignited. The first man lunged forward, a shoulder aimed for Stallone's chest in a clumsy attempt at dominance. But Stallone moved like a shadow slipping through smoke, sidestepping effortlessly, redirecting the man's own weight until he crashed hard into a standing leg press machine with a loud, metallic clang. Before the second could react, Stallone caught his wrist mid-swing, twisted, and drove his elbow clean into the man's ribs with brutal precision. The third tried to circle behind, hoping to grab Stallone from the back, but the veteran fighter pivoted, grabbed a resistance band hanging from the rack, and looped it tightly around the attacker's arm in a single, practiced motion, yanking him forward and off balance. The room was frozen in disbelief. The gym wasn't used to real violence, only simulated effort, performed aggression, Instagram-worthy sweat. But this wasn't staged. It was swift, it was surgical, and it was absolutely real. Phones came out. Whispers turned to gasps. The first man, groaning, pushed himself to his feet and charged again, rage now replacing arrogance. Stallone ducked low, grabbed the man by his hoodie, and flipped him hard over a workout bench. Dumbbells tumbled to the floor with a deafening crash. The second man stumbled back up, cradling his ribs, eyes wide with disbelief. Stallone advanced without pause, delivering a knee to the gut, folding the man like a towel, before sweeping his legs out and pinning him down with a calculated press of his arm. The third tried to crawl toward the mirror wall, disoriented, but Stallone grabbed the back of his shirt, lifted him halfway, and dropped a clean punch to the jaw that sent him slumping to the mat, dazed and limp. The fight was over in less than 30 seconds. Not a single motion wasted. Not a single word shouted. Just methodical, undeniable power. Real strength, not for show, but for defense. The bullies lay scattered like broken pride on polished rubber floors. Stallone stood above them, not triumphant, just still, controlled, steady. He turned slowly, scanning the room as if daring anyone else to step forward. No one did. He looked down at the groaning men and said, "Get up!" The words weren't a threat. They were a command, a statement of finality. One by one, the men staggered upright, shaky, ashamed, eyes darting between each other. Stallone didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "Look at her," he said, nodding toward Layla, who now stood tall, arms crossed, face firm. "Say it. Say it like you mean it." The tallest swallowed hard. "We're sorry," he muttered, barely audible. "Not to me," Stallone snapped. "To her." The men turned toward Layla, faces pale and drained of every ounce of false confidence. "We're sorry," one of them said. Another added, "We shouldn't have said what we said." The third just nodded, lips tight, words caught in shame. Layla looked at them, her expression unreadable. Her eyes gleamed slightly, but her posture didn't waver. She gave one slow nod, then looked to Stallone. "Thank you," she said softly, voice steady. "I didn't think anyone would—" Her words trailed off, but her meaning didn't. He nodded back. "You don't owe me anything," he said. "But don't ever let people like that decide how strong you are." Around them, the gym was dead quiet. Some people lowered their phones. Others watched in awe. No one laughed. No one smirked. Something had changed, not just in the three men, but in the room itself. Respect was no longer about muscles or noise. It was about what you chose to stand up for. Without another word, Stallone bent to pick up his towel, slung it over his shoulder, and walked toward the locker room. No victory lap, no attention-seeking gesture. Just the quiet exit of a man who had done what no one else would. As Stallone disappeared into the locker room, the tension that had gripped the gym slowly began to unravel, like steam releasing from a pressure valve. No one spoke. The three men who had just moments ago treated the gym floor like their kingdom now stood hunched, breathing hard, bruised in more than body. Their pride had been shattered, their illusions stripped away, not by yelling, not by public humiliation, but by something far more permanent: dignity. Layla remained where she stood, towel still clutched in her hand, her legs trembling slightly beneath her, but her spine straight as steel. The room felt heavier now, not because of what had happened, but because of what hadn't. So many people had stood just feet away. They had seen it unfolding, heard the comments, witnessed the escalation, and yet no one had moved until him, Sylvester Stallone. Not Rocky, not Rambo, not the Hollywood icon, just a man, quiet, observant, who decided that silence wasn't enough. One of the trainers approached Layla cautiously, his eyes lowered. "I'm so sorry," he mumbled. I should have stepped in." She looked at him, not unkindly, but with the weight of someone who'd heard that kind of apology before. "People like them count on the silence," she said, her voice no longer shaking. "And for a minute, I thought they were right." The trainer nodded, shame flickering across his face, then stepped back, giving her space as if now understanding that respect begins with room. Layla made her way to the locker area, passing machines, faces, whispers. Some people nodded at her. Others simply watched her go, unsure of what to say. One woman, in her 50s, wearing a UCLA hoodie, placed a gentle hand on Layla's shoulder as she passed. She didn't say a word. She didn't need to. The gesture alone meant something. In the hallway near the women's changing room, Layla stopped in front of a long mirror. She stared at her reflection, not at her clothes or her face, but at her eyes. She saw fire, yes, but also something else: relief. She hadn't broken. She hadn't retaliated in anger. And she hadn't been alone. Not entirely. Across the locker corridor, the men's door opened, and Stallone stepped out, towel now draped over his shoulder, cap pulled low again. He didn't expect her to be there, but when their eyes met, there was a beat of silence, not awkward but real, like two people standing in the aftermath of a shared war zone. She approached him, still holding her gear bag, still processing. "Why did you step in?" she asked quietly. "You didn't know me." Stallone exhaled, slow and thoughtful. "No, I didn't," he said. "But I know people like them, and I've known too many people who walked away when they should have stood still." She nodded, absorbing that. "I thought I had to stay calm to survive it. That if I showed anger, they'd win." "Staying calm doesn't mean giving in," he said. "It means you stayed stronger than they ever could have handled." He paused, then added, "And when someone stands beside you, it means they see your fight. even if they can't carry it for you. Layla looked down, swallowing the emotion that threatened to rise. "Thank you," she said again, softer this time. "Not just for stepping in, but for not making it about you." Stallone gave a slight smile. It never was. As they stood there, a few more gym members walked past. Some nodded, a few offered timid smiles. Change never happens all at once. But something had shifted. The trainers had begun talking to management. The front desk staff whispered about banning the 3 men permanently. Phones had captured the incident. Someone mentioned the footage already spreading on local social media. But that wasn't what mattered most. What mattered was the unspoken understanding that settled in, not just about race or power or celebrity, but about responsibility. Later that evening, Stallone sat alone in a quiet diner off Santa Monica Boulevard. The kind of place with black and white checkered floors, a jukebox in the corner, and waitresses who remembered your name. He sipped his black coffee slowly, replaying the events in his head. Not for ego, not for satisfaction, but because he'd seen what could have happened if he hadn't moved. He'd seen versions of it before. The way silence grows roots, the way it spreads, and the way one act, just one, can pull it out by the root. The bell above the door jingled, and he glanced up. Layla stepped in, slightly unsure, but smiling. "Mind if I join you?" He gestured to the booth across from him. "I owe you a milkshake," she joked, sliding in, "for not knocking them out sooner." He chuckled. "Vanilla or chocolate?" "Swirl," she said with a grin. They sat for a while, talking, not about the gym, not about what went viral online, not even about what hurt. They talked about books, about her non-profit, about his daughters, about how some fights are worth showing up for, even if you don't know who you're fighting for yet. By the time she stood to leave, the street outside had grown dark. She turned to him at the door. "You ever think people will stop assuming strength belongs to the loudest person in the room?" Stallone looked at her for a long moment. "Maybe not," he said, "but people remember the quiet ones longer, because they're the ones who show up when it counts." She nodded, then walked into the night. Back at the gym, a new sign was being installed near the entrance. It didn't mention Stallone. It didn't name names. It simply read, "This is a space for everyone." Respect is not optional. It was a small thing. Maybe it wouldn't stop the next incident, but it would make people look, make them think. And sometimes, that's where it begins. Layla returned to the gym the next day. Head high, steps strong. People greeted her this time. A few apologized, but most just smiled and meant it. As she stepped onto the floor and picked up her weights, no one interrupted. No one questioned her place. She didn't need to prove anything. Not anymore. And far across the country, someone watching a grainy clip on their phone, Stallone standing quietly, then moving without warning, paused and whispered to themselves, "That's what strength looks like." Not the punch, not the fame, not the muscles, but the choice to stand when no one else would. Because real heroes don't wear capes. Sometimes they wear hoodies, and they carry history not as a burden, but as a promise to never let the next person stand alone.